The wrong business partner is a very significant reason why even like startups fail, right? They have the wrong co-founder, the wrong dynamic, they're not aligned. You should choose your business partner as carefully as you choose a spouse.
What is up, my friend, and welcome back to the Legendary Life Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Ryce, health expert and coach to entrepreneurs, executives, and other high-performing professionals. Today, I've got a special guest on the show, Dr. Julie Gurner. She is a doctor of psychology and an executive performance coach with nearly a decade of experience working with some of the nation's top tech and finance executives and teams. She's the founder of Ultra Successful, a newsletter that explores the psychology behind what the top 1% do differently to reach and maintain elite levels of success. We talk about how high achievers get to the top and what keeps them there. You're going to learn the habits, mindset shifts, and daily decisions that separate the good from the incredible. So really excited to have this conversation. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Julie Gurner to the show.
I'm excited to be here, Ted. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of back and forth on X, formerly known as Twitter. And as soon as I saw you, I forget how I stumbled upon you, but I really liked what you had to say. It was very different than a lot of maybe the positive psychology. You're very positive, but the kind of pop positive psychology. So really excited to dive in. And the way I want to start this conversation is, why did the Wall Street Journal compare you to Wendy Rhoades of Billions?
You know, that was such an interesting thing that happened. It was the first time I could tell my mom, like, this is what I do for a living. I think she's always been confused. You know, are you a therapist? Are you like, what do you do? Are you a business consultant? Like, what actually do you do? So it was a great opportunity for me to explain to family and others, like, this is kind of what I do, only far more ethically. I'm better with my clients, I like to think, than that. But nonetheless, the reason why they made that comparison, I think, is because we generally do the same job, right? I work with people who are in high pressure, high stakes environments, who are, you know, fairly well established in business, who have, you know, are continuing to kind of push the envelope and really need and kind of want someone there who helps to kind of steer that direction and help them grow in a way that's going to be effective and kind of maximizes their potential, even in a seat where many people see them as being like kind of at the peak of their potential. You know, deep down, those folks know that there's still a lot more in the tank. And so it's my job to kind of eke that stuff out and make sure they're getting where they want to go.
Love it. And if you're listening right now, you haven't checked out this show, Billions, just watch a few clips or a few episodes with Wendy. It's such a great show. So well done. And Julie, before we hopped on and started recording, you said we share similar clientele, but you said something so fascinating when it comes to fitness. Can you repeat what you said? And then let's dive into that conversation.
Sure. You know, one of the things we were talking about beforehand is how we do have this overlap. And I stated, you know, well, my clients, you know, actually being like, getting into fitness is an outlier. Like, most of them are not necessarily folks, even though they are incredibly high performers. I mean, if you even look at some of the highest operating people, whether it's in tech and otherwise, you'll see that like they tend to get into fitness like after they've done a lot of their building, right? Like Mark Zuckerberg is like after he's done a lot with Meta, and then he's like in BJJ and he's very like fit, and you see the same with, you know, Jeff. It's interesting to me that, like, you know, the people, I do have a few clients who are very into fitness, but they are the outliers of the group.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you try to coach them to get into fitness? Or I've seen you talk about like, hey, listen, sometimes you need to push everything to the side and just go for what you want. Now, of course, I'm paraphrasing you there. If I'm missing context or something, feel free to dive in. But how do you approach that with clients?
I know who they are and I know what lines that they draw. So I try to think about what are the things that I can do. You know, my job is primarily like psychological, in that like we look for unlocks to kind of continue to push them cognitively forward and kind of thinking about it more in that way. But the baseline functioning of anyone is, you know, there's a lot of physiological components that are incredibly important. I think that the first thing I do is I try to look at like sleep, right? Like sleep is a foundation of everything else. And so while I know that I can probably tweak more, and this is where like I start to, express more nuanced things as we go, but like if I can get like a foundation of sleep and make sure that they are actually sleeping, not just 7 to 9 hours, like not their hopefully they're 7 to 9 hours a night, because even what we know from the research is even if you're sleeping 5 hours a night, which people would say, well, that's fine. We see dramatic impacts on cognitive function, even with kind of what we would say minimal sleep deprivation. So I try to look at things like sleep where I can say, okay, there's a foundation. And then as we kind of move up and they've kind of gotten that on track and, we're working through other things where they have pushes and other types of elements, we start to talk about small optimizations. And that can be something like, cardiovascular fitness. It can be like, I try to frame it, to be frank, in challenges because they love a challenge. So like, I've had a client who wanted to go and climb a mountain. And so like, but to do that, you can't just, take your helicopter and climb a mountain. You have to actually train for that. And so if they have goals, they tend to respond a little bit better than just saying, hey, you really should get in the gym and lift some weights. That's not going to be something they're probably going to take. It's harder to convince them to take time out of their day for something like that. But if they have a goal, sometimes we'll look at it as, kind of a well-formed life. Like you want to have challenges in your work, you have a great foundation in your personal life, and maybe you want a challenge outside of that, like, a triathlon or running your first 5K or, climbing a mountain or going skiing this winter. You want to be in a place where you can do that and actually be the good one among your friends. You don't want to be the one that like, falls out, right? I mean, how embarrassing. So they are people who care about, everybody cares about that stuff. And so I try to frame it in terms of challenges, but it does help them to perform better everywhere if we can kind of shore some of those areas up too.
Yeah, something that I think doesn't get talked about enough is I push fitness, health and fitness hard. I don't say zealot, but, almost, right?
Right.
At the same time, I feel like, and so many other health and fitness coaches do the same thing, but I started, as I've gotten older, I'm 48, as I've gotten older, I've started to realize, these guys, it's an opportunity cost. If you're growing a business and operating at a high level and there's only so many hours in a day, and you don't want your wife to divorce you or your kids to end up in a bad situation because you're not around, or, your husband, as the case may be, to leave you, it's an opportunity cost. And so it's interesting that you frame it as challenges. I want to come back to what you talked about earlier. You said that you help your clients push forward cognitively.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And what does that look like? Because what we believe here, it's like health is the biopsychosocial model. There's the psychological side, social side, but most people just think it's physical. So when it comes to cognitively helping your clients push forward, what does that mean? What does that look like?
If people think about psychology traditionally, they always think about like psychology and therapy for some reason, which is not what I do. But, there are mountains and mountains of journals around how to kind of make sick people well. But in the kind of details of that, there are things where if you are a high functioning, person who's operating in high stress environments, who needs to make very solid decisions, who needs to be, present and effective, there are always little tweaks that you can do to get people, like instead of going from health to wellness, you get people who are operating very well, and then you can see the little cracks to make them optimal. And that's really where my opportunities are, right? The person who, they know they have more in the tank and they can't figure out why they're not there. And for the most of the people, they would look at that person and say, guy, you're doing well. Like, what are you worried about? But for them, they see kind of untapped potential that's still kind of behind the curtain. And usually those things are not a matter of skill, because they will learn any skill you ask that they need to learn to get where they want to go. So the thing holding them back is themselves. And they know it, but they don't have enough insight into it. And if you look at the people around them, they tend to be people who are pleasing them. And so they're probably not going to point out some challenges that they may be having or blind spots that they may have. And so it's really my job to say, okay, what's the thing they're not seeing? What are the areas that they need some pushback on? what are the areas they need to unlock or that they feel like really locked up around, like kind of unlocking, unblocking, and getting people where they need to be. I think about it, and sometimes I'll describe it this way, is that like if you can go with a football analogy, like my job is to make sure that that guy can run the entire way down the field and that the blockers or everything is blocked so that he can get where he wants to go as efficiently and effectively as possible. And some of those things that need to be blocked out are things like, your tendency toward shiny objects, the way in which your calendar is managed. It could be the people that are around you that you like but aren't effective. It could be a lot of different things that are allowing the blockers to exist. And so, like we get really honest, and what's fantastic about it are these are people who love to be challenged. They're people who will take the pushback. And I think that it's, for some of them, maybe one of the rare places where they really get to self-examine in a setting where someone has absolutely no skin in the game. Like, I'm not, they're executives that that is dependent on them for, their salary or their career or their equity or any of that. My job is aligned with theirs. Like if they succeed, I succeed. And so like we're completely aligned, and I will push hard to make sure they get where they want to go.
Yeah, it's so funny because I see a lot of parallels in what I do as well. We deal with a lot of people who are surrounded by yes, or people pleasing, yes
Sure.
men, yes women. And then when we have a conversation, I'm always careful to approach the conversation in a productive way. I don't know if you know who David Goggins is, for example.
I do.
Right? Yeah. What do you think about like people who feel they need that type of, I don't know, it's almost like someone to berate you and to call you names. I tell clients, I don't attract clients who like that, but I feel like sometimes I could be harder on them or they want that type of thing. And I'm just like, that's not really my style. And I feel like if I am harder on you, or start to call you names, and provided that you respond to that type of coaching, what's going to happen when nobody's there to call you names, right? Nobody in your circle is
Right.
going to do it. You don't want to work with me anymore because we've been together for long enough to achieve the goals. Like, how are you going to maintain it? Can you talk a little bit about your views on
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah. I think it's a really great point because for me, I think about that as facilitating dependency. If you are dependent on me, like my goal in working with any of my clients is that they don't need me. I don't want them to need me. And so like, I'm sure that for you, as someone who wants to instill a certain work ethic and discipline and, a way of maintaining their fitness, you don't want them to be completely dependent on you for, their every workout for the next 20 years of their life. You want to be able to probably, I can't speak for you, but for me, I think about the fact that like, if you are dependent on me and, time has passed, I have not done my job right. I think about it as tapping into something in you that can connect with the force necessary to do the things that you want to do and kind of connecting up the obsession and the goals and your drive with the goals that you have so that you can push forward with momentum and you don't need me for that. If I want it more than you, then I don't go into that area. Like for me, I would never take that client. If they say, hey, I'm not motivated to build a business, Dr. Gurner, can you help me? I would say, we are not a good fit. That's not the kind of person I can work with because I can't instill drive in you. At least in my work, I can't instill drive. Someone's got to have the drive, and maybe it's misdirected. Maybe there's a challenge in focusing it, but I can't want it more than you do, or we can't work together.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that because, it's cliche in my world where people are like, well, I'm just not motivated. I'm like,
Right.
well, what do you want me to do? Paying me money might motivate you, but probably not in the way that you want, to the extent that you want. What are your views on motivation? And maybe for someone listening right now who has that belief, like, well, I would do more, but I'm just not motivated.
Yeah, I think that it's different in my world than probably yours, because I think that for some people, having something they commit to where they show up is a way of starting a pattern that begins to build a habit that becomes something that they see evidence of that they love. Like I could imagine that someone, and again, this is just me imagining, so I'm not sure, but I could imagine if somebody is really struggling with their fitness and they would pay you a certain amount and, you show up or they show up to the call or whatever the structure is, they start to have these workouts. Maybe it's challenging for them at first, but since they have you waiting on them, they feel more engaged in showing up. They start to see sort of their body change, and then they gain a little bit more motivation. They're like, oh, this stuff
For
really
sure.
works. And so I'm going to keep doing it. How much can we get? Now they're looking a little bit better. How much better could I look? How much better, so there's a different physical kind of change that happens. Whereas I think that in my work, if you show up and say, hey, motivate me, like my expectation is that, we meet for 1 hour, maybe once a week for a period of time, but the rest, the hard work is going to happen when I'm not there. And so unlike you, where the hard work happens oftentimes when you are there. And so for me, I'm relying on the fact that their motivation is going to be doing the work until I see them the next time. And, my job is not that they're going to, I can't control how they behave in their companies. I can't control, the types of decisions they're going to make. But we set a path and a course and a commitment during the time we talk where they're accountable for things, they're trying different things, they're committing to different things, and it's on them to execute that when I'm not in the room. And so, and we'll follow up and kind of talk about some of these things, or maybe barriers or obstacles or challenges or problems, but, they need to execute when I'm not in the room. And that's probably the big difference between you and I.
Yeah. When I was a personal trainer, that was definitely true. These days, it's all virtual, so it's on them
Wow.
to follow the plan. I do meet with clients in person, but it's only for a weekend, and it'll be spread out through the year.
Okay.
So they're very much having to do the right things. That's the type of client we like to work with. Personal training doesn't work that well. I mean, that's why I spent 19 years in it. I was just like, I got to get out of this. People don't really, they just go to Europe, get chubby, right? And then come back and start the whole thing starts again. At least and I was working, nothing against the clients I was working with in Miami Beach. They were amazing people at the end of my, if you want to call it, career there. But I just, I felt like I was more babysitting than helping people break through to bigger levels of health. And I'm like obsessed with longevity right now, right? I don't want to go out with a preventable chronic disease like heart disease, so, or diabetes.
And that's something that most of my clients do care about. I mean, they care about longevity. They care about all of the blood work and the scans and the making sure that they're on top of those things. So that's something that actually I think gets a lot of engagement.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about how do you coach people on stress, and what does that word mean for you? Because to choose entrepreneurship or to be an executive, it's stressful, right? You're choosing to be stressed, and take it away.
Yeah. Stress is a baseline, right? And it's stressful even when you're doing things that you love, because those things are going to go through cycles and they're going to be up and down. And, you're going to have days when you do very well, and you're going to have times or seasons when you're not doing as well, or there are cycles in the company that are not what you expect. So for me, I think about, how do you, one of the things I think about with stress is that once it reaches a level, how do we know that the stress is no longer productive? Is it that, usually what the signs that you'll see is that, they're not engaging in certain things they should be engaging in, because again, they're just trying to cognitively lighten their load. It's what people do when they're overwhelmed, right? They just, they opt out of some things. They try to give themselves more room, but in doing that, they're putting things off. So there's more procrastination. There's oftentimes things that they just opt out of that were really exciting initiatives that they were going to do. So we look at what are the drivers of, what are the signals, number one, that you are too stressed right now? What are the things that we're seeing? Is it overwhelm? Is it, decision-making starts to drag out? There's a lot of different types of things that we can pinpoint, and everybody's different. And then we say, well, what's driving it? What are the problems driving it? So it could be I had one person who, for example, didn't have an assistant for a period of time, completely overwhelmed by their own schedule. Obviously, there's a clear, obvious plug to that. But in almost every case, when someone is dealing with stress, you can ask someone, okay, tell me a little bit about the most stressful things you're facing right now. And they're happy to talk to you about it. And then you just start to dive in and say, well, if you were to solve this in an ideal world, how would you solve it? Like, what are the things that we can do to kind of take this off your plate? Or what are the things we can do to make this easier? And they usually know what those things are, but when people are overwhelmed, they're not taking the time to like play back the tape and like actually explore those things. And so then you begin to take things, off of their plate. They can run a little bit better, to that analogy. You relieve some of the stress points. So, everything is a process of like, you can do surgically, and you make it so that they have the best cognitive space to do their highest and best work. Like, I want everybody, my goal really, and if it gives anything away, my goal is always to pull everyone I work with into their, like, the thing that only they can do that is their highest and best use. Because if somebody else can do it, they should be doing it. If someone else can do it better than you, they should be doing it. And so your best use in your job, and if you're running a company, is always going to be the thing that you do exceptionally well, that you are the top 1% at. And I want to put you in that as much as humanly possible. 70% of your day, not, like the time between meetings that you're trying to like make that happen. So that's what I'm trying to do all the time, is just shove them in that place, and they fly. Like, I mean, it's a great thing to do, but it's a hard thing to do because people don't want to give up the stuff that they're pretty good at, right? Or that they're high control around, or any of those other things. It's hard to do, but when you do it, their company moves, revenue moves, bottom line moves, like they're happier.
Yeah, it's so funny. I find myself often, depending on the client, I remember a client I was talking to, he was running a company, and I forget what type. I think it was having to do with real estate, because it was a little while back. But I started talking to him. He was like, no, well, I don't have that much time to exercise. And I always, get into the conversation. Well, why not? What's going on? He's like, yeah, well, I'm doing all this stuff for the business. And yeah, I could probably get someone else to do it, but he just didn't want to let go of control.
Right.
Can you talk about like how someone listening right now, maybe help them gain some awareness? Like, if you feel you're in a situation where you're like that guy, his life could be better, but he's gripping onto things and says, and it's almost like, Julie, he maybe has, I don't know what word you would use. It would be like a compulsion to just like, I don't want to let this go because I don't want to face anything else, or I don't want to, what's behind that?
That's a fantastic question. And I think that your listeners will really benefit. So I think when you're building anything and you're an ambitious person, you are always the one who does every job, right? Like, I mean, you do everything, and you probably did it with your own business, but like, and I certainly have, where like, you're ambitious, you can take on a lot of things, you can multitask, and so you do, and you do all the nuts and bolts. And, in order for your business to evolve, you have to evolve. So other people have to start doing some of those things. The challenge is that people start equating like grinding with like working. And that's a problem, because especially like, let's just say real estate, some of the most successful real estate guys that I've worked with spend a lot of time doing things like golf, networking, dinners, connecting, flying places to, speak with investors. I mean, like, all of those things don't feel like work when you're a guy who's used to like, I want to control, like, be a part of this transaction or be a part of the details and do all that stuff. Like, that feels like the work. But the real work is where you have the highest dollar value. And if you find yourself like kind of holding on to control, what you're doing is you're setting your own ceiling, right? Because you can't evolve. If you have to keep your hands in the pudding of all of that, you will not have hands to do all of these other things that are forward reaching. So you're just going to keep your hands in that pudding. And the sacrifice is you are setting a ceiling for yourself. And the only way to change that is to change like the capacity that you have. And you can't make more time. There's only 24 hours in a day. So how do you free up that time now? And the only path forward is to say, is it okay if someone does that job at 80% of what I can do? Is that okay with me? And people hate it, right? Like, because they want it to be done to 100%. But the truth is, if you can sacrifice and be like, if it's 80% good, then you can do all of these other things that grow your business 5, 10 times over. And is that worth it? And that person will evolve. Like, 80% will turn into 85, or you may find somebody who does it just as well as you that you have to spend some time with. But you don't want to cap yourself. So unfortunately, that person is setting a ceiling. And even though it feels like success, he can't make more time. He can't make more time so he can exercise. He can't make more time so that he can get other transactions if he's already underwater and like drowning in the amount that he has. And, in real estate, people will do a ton of transactions themselves. And eventually they all realize, like, I need a team. And, they build out their team. And so and it doesn't matter if you're, small or big, you can't do everything yourself, or you will be smaller than you otherwise could be. And so when you finally realize that, you have to start thinking about the things you have to begin to do to get people in seats so that you can do the things you need to do to begin to really start to reach your potential. Because what you'll see, which is the worst, is that you're going to start to see people that started in the business with you grow faster than you. They're going to get bigger than you. They're going to earn more than you. They're going to take more market share than you. And it's because you can't let go. And the only way you can run up ahead of your company is if you let go of some of the things within it. And it's going to get real demoralizing very quickly when you start watching that person who started 2 years after you, like, lap you in transactions. That's going to suck. So you got to make these hard calls because, and again, here's a great example of how the business can't evolve faster than the leader evolves. And so you've got to, like, it's about you personally. Like, you have all the skills, you're probably great at your job, but you've got to make changes personally. And like, that's where someone like me would be like, all right, let's talk about what's going on here. Like, what are your goals and, like your financial goals coming into the coming year? And he probably will tell you that they're higher than, he was the previous year. Where are you going to find the time? How are you going to do that? Let's talk about a path to getting there. What are the things that are holding you back? And all of they don't have mind share. They don't have the time to network, so I don't want to ramble. So, but yeah, that's
not at all.
That's the way.
Yeah, no, it's not rambling at all. I'm taking it all in and just thinking about some of the situations. My own situation, it's kind of funny. I'm sure I would enjoy working with you as well, but my business partner's more the type that has the control issue. She's amazing. I make the opposite mistake where I try to pass things off too quick and they don't do a good job. And then I have to go back and do the work anyway. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So
yeah, there's a good middle ground, right? Like, so there are ways in which you set up structures to kind of let people know, like, this is how you win in your role. So like with your partner who may be very high control, like, are there metrics that they could be reporting into her so she or reports that she's getting every day, like on her screen, that's kind of showing her the stats of where everything is at all the time. So she can just kind of look at her kind of control board and know exactly where things are. And you don't need people to be like kind of lording over people or figuring it out. You'll see immediately when things are off. If you're someone who's high control, you know how to read the numbers. It's super transparent. And you give people ways like, this is what it looks like to win in our organization. These are the metrics you need to hit this quarter. And, see what they do. Have them reporting in on it weekly or whatever the thing is, and see what they can do. They should come to you with any questions, but it makes people feel better to be able to check on those things on a regular basis.
She needs that to function well. She really needs some feedback. And I also wanted to ask you, I worked with a client, great guy, very amicable and personable, just great guy. And he was talking to me about his business partner. So this is a man, he's built his business up, ended up selling it, but stayed on to help the transition. You're probably a lot more
an
versed
earnout or
in
something.
those situations. Right. But he was talking about his relationship with his business partner. And it sounded like obviously, he was married to a woman. But it sounded like they were like in a toxic marriage, but the parallels were there. Can you talk about, like, do you see that often? How do you know you're in a let's say, a toxic business relationship or perhaps a toxic company.
Yeah, the wrong business partner is a very significant reason why even like startups fail, right? They have the wrong co-founder, the wrong dynamic, they're not aligned. You should choose your business partner as carefully as you choose a spouse. And hopefully that's with some caution, right? Like hopefully you are choosing your spouse carefully. So that's assuming that amount of rigor. But like, you really should think about that because you will be spending a lot of time with them. They have to be solid communicators. You have to be a solid communicator. You have to be able to work through challenges and solve problems. Sometimes I'm called in to kind of resolve disagreements, and that's always a real challenge because people are very passionate about their particular perspective. But if you do it right, and you have a great co-founder or a great business partner, those things can work wonderfully. And they don't have to be, every business partner won't look the same, but they have to be the right fit for you personally. So, for example, I've had a client who knew that he wasn't really great with people, like his people skills were not his big thing. He's a very technical guy. It wasn't his strong suit. And so his business partner was fantastic leader of people. And so they could be very, very different and have very, very different amounts of expertise, but they were completely aligned on the mission, very supportive of each other, really understood like what they were responsible for, very high ownership, very like high accountability, and it ended up working out really well. But you'll have others that they both want to be kind of like the front-facing person, or they get jealous of each other, or there are challenges around how they think about the direction of the company, the initiatives, and they don't know how to resolve problems. It's kind of like if you're going to have a great marriage, you have to learn how to fight correctly because you're going to have disagreements. And so it always has to be, if you're going to do it effectively, like me and you versus the problem, not me versus you. Like if it's me versus you, we're in a war, right? Like and when you have very aggressive people, they're going to rip each other, right? Like especially if you have really aggressive people. But if you have really aggressive people and it's both of them versus a problem, it's like you get the benefit of both of them kind of tackling the problem from their own frame of reference. And it becomes a really powerful force and a force of creativity. So you do want people who understand how to like resolve and fight in a way that doesn't put their relationship in disrepair. Not always easy to do because people are passionate and, yell at each other and, get angry about the business. And it's high stakes, but choose your partner carefully.
Yeah, in our case, I feel really good with my business partner right now, but it's because we both done therapy. We both, to your point, we've worked on evolving ourselves, growing in other ways, coaching, and so now we're at a really good place. We do have arguments occasionally, but I feel very lucky. I remember also hearing about a similar business to ours, a coaching business. And they didn't talk about their fighting or anything like that. I believe it was a husband and wife, but they like just blew the company up. They went from making zero to like $5 million a year in just a few years, but they ended up blowing it up. Why does sabotage? Maybe it's not always self. Maybe there's more selves involved, but why does sabotage happen? I remember reading this. This is in part of an entrepreneur group. I was just like, man, my business is not making $5 million a year, right? So it's like, if you gave me that, I would figure out like I might lose money, but you know what I mean? Like I'm not the person, meaning I don't have the skills, knowledge, whatever I need to build my business to that level that fast. But man, if you gave it to me, I feel like I could do a pretty good job, but they blew it up. Why does that happen in your experience?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that there are a lot of times what you find is that, and this is not always true because people can sabotage at others, right? And then that's something that's like the worst dynamic.
What do you mean by that?
Like if you have a couple and they're not getting along, you could have one person who says, you know what, I'm out. We can just burn this place to the ground. I don't really care. And they find a way to like just burn it all, right? Like, so you can have that dynamic, which you never want and is probably the most toxic thing you could find if it was in a couple or relationship. But for the most part, I would say probably the the biggest reason that people sabotage the progress or the goals that they have is that they personally, and I'll say a little bit more about it, but like sometimes people professionally move very quickly in their life, but they personally have not caught up to understanding who they are in that seat. Like they still see themselves as the person who either doesn't deserve it, doesn't belong in those rooms, got lucky, like all those things. And we see that reinforced sometimes on social media. People be like, like there's a lot of luck. Well, I mean, in my opinion, the luck comes after the work, right? So like nobody just has luck fall from the sky and has a $5 million business or a $10 million or $100 million business. They actually put themselves out there. They did a lot of work. Maybe they saw some opportunities that were fortunate, but they would never have seen them if they wouldn't have done the back work. So luck to me is always a very interesting thing in business because it comes after a lot of work. But the sabotaging element is because people don't see themselves, like you will never grow beyond where you see yourself belonging or being or who you are. So if you say like, I'm basically, a lot of these people, when you look at how they operate, they see their company and themselves as like, they see how it can be worth 25, 50, $200 million. They just have to get there. And then once they're there, they're like, okay, like this is what I always knew it could be, what I always hoped it could be. And they're sitting in that seat comfortably. But when you get someone whose like company grows really fast and they still see themselves as like, hey, I'm still a scrappy startup guy, but like your company is 20 million bucks. You're not scrappy startup guy anymore. And now you're nervous when you go to like to meetings to partner with, other companies. You feel like, if they give us our nod, that's a big deal, when really you're bringing a lot of value to that room and you're kind of not owning that. People say, well, what is it with this guy? Like, is he not confident in his product? Like, what's going on there? Like, people start reverting to the person that they see themselves as, not the person that they actually are. Because if they own that position, they end up pushing the company forward and doing well. And then you see people who own a position far greater than where they're actually sitting, and that tends to work out well too. Like, there's a really famous story about, I think his name's Jesse Itzler, who like the NetJets guy, he took all these chances and got in all these rooms he really, like everyone would say he had no business being in, but he felt he had business being there. And so people ended up listening to him. He ended up cutting some really great deals that he should never have done by any one stretch of the imagination. But because he felt it, he saw himself in those seats, other people had a belief in him as well. That self-belief is just kind of everything. So if you still see yourself as like, I'm just a guy from X suburb or whatever, and I don't belong in these rooms, or like, yeah, that's not really me, then everyone's going to see that that's not really you. You're not going to act like that's really you. You're going to seem out of place. You're going to feel out of place. You're not going to make the decisions that you need to make. You're going to probably play a lot smaller than you need to. And then your company is going to kind of reduce down to the level at which you play, right? You have to be big, play big, own your position, grow with the company, not allow the company to outgrow you. And because if you have to play catch up, that's a really tough place to be in. So people end up sabotaging because then the company feels more comfortable, right? Like, this is the kind of company I kind of deserve. It's the kind of company that fits with a guy or a woman like me. And that's a small place to be, because eventually you end up saying, yeah, I don't know what happened. Like, I had this shot and for some reason it just didn't work out. And that for some reason is you. It's always you. So that's how we think about it.
I've referred to that, I don't know where I got it, but identity lag. When someone gets very successful, but they're still acting. I had clients that were, these weren't business owners, but they were high performing professionals. They weren't paying people to clean their house. If you really enjoy it, go for it. But you're here, you want to change your fitness and you're cleaning your house. Like, what's going on?
Right.
It's so strange. But it happens. I do want to ask you though, the way you're talking right now, it's like, oh, you have this big shot and everything, and you could grow a company and you want to really go for it. How do we know when to stop? I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine. He has a successful company, a 7-figure company, not, super duper 8, whatever, doing a 9-figure, but it was doing really well. And he was part of Tony Robbins' Business Mastery. And I remember him coming back from it, and he was just like, man, I don't want to go to the next level. I feel like what I need to do to get there is not what I want to do. It's not what's going to make me happy. So Julie, how do we know when a situation, now I'm using my friend, but for anyone who feels like they're in that situation, how do we know that's our best self talking or our BS self talking?
It's a really great point, and I think your friend is someone that we never talk about, especially on social media. No one talks about the person who says, look, I have a fantastic life. I have everything that I need. My company is very manageable, or my job is very manageable. And this is my ideal. This is what I want. This is what makes me happy. And like other people might want to be Elon Musk, or other people might want to have that big, 9-figure exit. Not me. I'm happy with free cash flow, a great life, good retirement, a family that loves me. I'm pretty happy where I'm at. And this is what I would say is my ideal. I think as long as you aren't going to look back with regret, that you feel like this is the thing that genuinely makes you happy, to me, like, you win. Like, if you can be at a place where you say, look, I'm going to have no regrets, I'm very happy, this is what I want in my life, you win. And I don't care if that is, you are a maintenance worker or you are somebody who is, making millions of dollars a year. Like, your happiness and what that calibrates to is going to be different for every person. And if you say, hey, I think that my life would be fantastic at like 5 million a year or 10 million a year, or whatever it is for you, or my life would be really happy at 90,000 a year and that's all I need, and that actually makes me happy, then you win. I think that it's a lack of, regret and feeling like you actually have like the life that you want. When you ask people like, what does your ideal life look like? Some people will give you answers that are, very materialistic. Some people will give you answers that are much more like family focused. Some people will give you answers that are very comprehensive. But I hope that everyone listening really thinks to themselves, like, what does my ideal life look like? And the truth of it is, that's so wild, is that if you actually calculate out what it takes to have that life, the financial figure is usually far lower than you think. It's crazy, like how much you actually need to live a life that is ideal for you. And once you get there, you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to go further, or this is actually like, I'm good. I think it takes a lot of courage to say I'm good if you actually are good, and not just do things for other people's social nod or Instagram or whatever it is. I do think if you say like I'm good because you just want to fit in with, the social circle that you're at, and there's a lot of secondary gain, right? Like staying the same keeps people comfortable with who you are. Your wife's friends or your husband's friends, like you're in the same circle, you have the same interests. And like, as you move and you continue to grow, sometimes you have different interests, you have different schedules, you can't do the same things, your life looks different, you make different sacrifices, and that changes, it shakes up your life. And so if you're doing it just because you want the secondary gain and the nod of other people, I think that's very different than just deciding, but you should be the decider. And I think to me, that's the difference. If you have that little voice in your head that says, you're not really happy, you're just doing that, follow the little voice.
Powerful words. Dr. Julie Gurner, really appreciate you coming on the show today. And if you've enjoyed this conversation with Julie like I have, she has a Substack, ultra successful. So you go to Dr. Gurner, DrGurner.substack, substack.com. Of course, I'll have that on the show notes for this episode. You can join over 43,000 subscribers, of which I'm one, by the way. I love your reading your
Thank you.
Your Substack. Of course, you can follow her on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well. You're one of my favorite people to follow, Julie, because you say some things sometimes like nobody else is saying that about success or the price of it, the cost of it, what you need to do to get it. You don't pull punches, and you don't I don't know what you would call it. It's not that pop psychology or the pop like motivational stuff. It's like, oh, she's been doing this for a long time and she's really good at what she does. That's the vibe I got. So it was such a pleasure.
I've been in the trenches a long time, and I think that like one of the great things about X is like you and I have been connected on there. I look today, I think we've known each other on X for like literally years, I think, at this point. Like we've interacted or engaged in some way. And we've agreed and we've disagreed on things. Like, I mean, it's fantastic. Always respectfully, by the way, on both sides. But I think that there's a genuine respect between us. And I certainly, respect the work that you do and how you put yourself out there and certainly promote the importance of fitness and high functioning and making sure that people can be at their best wherever they go. So our messages are pretty aligned. So it was great to meet you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, if you're listening, make sure you subscribe to the show to get more of these conversations just like this. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll speak to you next time. If this episode hit home, make sure you hit the subscribe button because we've got even more mindset, health and fitness, biohacking, and high-level strategies coming your way so you can live your best life in your 40s, 50s, and beyond.